Welcome back to Wilson versus Wilson, where we discuss politics, news, and kind of whatever else strikes our fancy. I'm Peter Wilson.
I'm Jess Wilson.
Today we're going to get started with some headlines.
Which is vice versa?
Vice versa, where I brought the headlines today, and we're going to get some quick reactions out of Jess here. The first one I've got is from the New York Post.
I hate the Post. I don't hate them. I'm not a fan of some of their articles.
Oh, well, yeah. They're one of the ones Anyway, Iran can make enough fissile for one nuke in 12 days, U.S. officials say.
Yeah, I am familiar with that news. The other news coming out of Iran, as we were talking about before the show, is that schoolgirls in Iran are being poisoned en masse. No one is sure if it's by the government or by someone else. But, yeah. Lots of bad things happening in Iran. For the record, there are also still protests going on following the death of Mahsa Amini. So...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not someone we want to have a bomb.
No, and here's my thing, I'll clarify. I don't want anyone to have nukes, actually.
Yeah. I think everybody would really prefer that.
I'm really, there's that classical, and I think it's a pretty widely accepted argument of, God, what is the name of it? You know what I'm talking about.
Mutually assured destruction.
Yeah, mutually assured destruction. But not just that, there's a specific name for it that I can't remember off the top of my head. But it's essentially the idea that having more nukes makes people more safe, actually, because the more nukes you have, the more incentive you have for other countries to not nuke you, because then they'll be nuked. It doesn't really matter, I think, because one nuke, if we do that, the whole planet's gone. Bye-bye planet.
Yeah. In some ways, though.
So I don't think more nukes makes you more safe. I think that argument is frankly dumb. I think that's dumb. And I am a proponent of no nukes. I think there are some things we just shouldn't have.
That's fair. But I think then, of course, it comes down to who puts it down first. It's just the slow,
All of us. All of us do it. All of us agree that that's enough. If you have two babies with knives and they're, trying to knife fight, you don't take one knife first and you don't let them have the knives.
Yes, but...
You take both knives.
Historically, though, Russia and America, not big fans of people taking stuff from them, period. So... I'm
aware of that.
They just sold us Alaska, though. Thanks for that. Appreciate it. Anyway, sorry. Yeah.
Why? Why do we have nukes? Get rid of them.
I decided to go real diverse news sites today. So this is from Newsmax.
Okay.
Which I do not endorse.
Okay.
U.S. intel: Havana syndrome not caused by foreign adversary.
Interesting. I am a little familiar. I just think the whole issue around Havana syndrome is a little, I don't know. I've tried reading up on it before, and I just get confused. So,
which is also what happened to the people in Havana. For sure.
For sure. Yeah. So it's just, the headline is just that Intel is saying that
it wasn't a foreign adversary. So
yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah. I just thought it was interesting because I'd not heard about it for a while. Havana syndrome is where diplomats in Cuba had experienced, I think maybe U.S. diplomats in Cuba and some other places had experienced some weird symptoms of like ringing in their ears, pressure, dizziness, vertigo, just odd things. Okay. Yeah. Now here's a bit of good news. Quite good news, actually.
I like good news.
Eli Lilly cuts the price of insulin, capping drug at $35 per month out of pocket.
Hey, okay.
Yeah.
In my opinion, should still be cheaper than that because it doesn't cost them $35 even to make a month's worth of
a pharmacy company
insulin,
doing something good.
Yeah, that's actually, that is really good news.
I'm a big fan.
Very proud about, not proud, why would I be proud of them? Gross. I'm very happy about that. I'll never be proud of a corporation, for the record. Except for my own, easternprogress.com. No, I'm glad. Should have done it, when was insulin invented? Should have done it then. Should have kept the price. Cheaper then. It should still be cheaper now. Yeah. Even cheaper than $35. That's my point. I just feel like, and this is not just for insulin. I think this is all for all medicines. I think this is for even period products, because this is something we've been talking about in the newsroom lately. Think about it this way. Women have to spend extra money to buy things that are often pretty expensive that men will never really have a use for. Like, you don't have to go out and buy pads.
Yeah.
So that's automatically, just because I exist, an extra expense.
Yeah.
I feel like we should not have to pay, not just as me or women, I feel like nobody should have to pay extra to, live comfortably and
stuff
hygienically.
Isn't free.
No, stuff isn't free. But also, Peter, do you know how much a box of good pads costs?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Up to $15, depending.
Yeah.
And if you need organic ones, more than that. Same with tampons. Tampons are really expensive as well.
I do think someone was floating the thing about it would make sense to put that as not having a sales tax on it.
You would think it shouldn't have a sales tax.
Soda is not necessary, and there's no sales tax on it because it's food. I think we can,
Yeah, stop taxing pads and tampons. It just pisses me off.
Apparently, there's also Eli Lilly also offers one for another form of insulin, like they're
there's a couple of different
$25 a month.
Yeah, there's a couple of different kinds of insulin depending on what type of diabetes you have and other factors. But glad it's cheaper than what they were charging, and it should be even cheaper than that.
Yeah, I think there's a company making a change to deal with the market, which I think is interesting. Let's see. And here's a weird one.
Okay. Did you get this
from the Washington Post?
Oh, I was going to say, did you get this from the AP Oddities page?
The Eli Lilly was NPR.
Okay.
This is Washington Post. How a Cambodian monkey smuggling ring could worsen U.S. lab shortages.
I feel like that's not that weird.
No?
No, I feel like that's not that weird because, I don't know if you know the extent of animal testing in the U.S., but it is a thing.
Yeah, no, I know.
It's a thing. And not necessarily all of those monkeys are gotten ethically. I'd say a lot of them are not gotten ethically.
Yeah.
To clarify, I don't think animal testing is ethical anyways, because testing on monkeys really doesn't even tell us anything about how it's going to interact with humans, for the record, because we're the surprise, different species.
Weird.
Sorry, it makes me angry. Okay, I read The Hot Zone in high school, and I've been angry since.
What is the Hot Zone?
You've never read The Hot Zone?
No.
It's about the, it's like a narrative science fiction kind of work.
Okay.
About the 2018 outbreak of Ebola in a laboratory of monkeys in Virginia.
I didn't know that.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, fun fact, the U.S. had an Ebola outbreak.
But among monkeys.
It was among monkeys, it was...
more people have been married to Kim Kardashian than have had Ebola in the U.S. Interesting fact.
Yeah. But these poor monkeys. It's really... And, it describes in detail the conditions they were kept in before they all got sick. And then once they got sick, it just got worse. It was really sad.
Yeah.
Not that I was all for animal testing before high school, but that really just...
Actually, a very big advocate.
Stop lying. That for me was just a moment of oh, yeah, this is something that really makes me angry.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It doesn't surprise me that, because smugglers from other countries would affect.
Monkey smuggling, and I don't know. Well, that's it for headlines. Do you want to talk about good old Marjorie Taylor Greene? Okay.
Sure.
So here's a tweet that Marjorie Taylor Greene sent a week ago. We need a national divorce. We need to separate by red states and blue states and shrink the federal government. Everyone I talk to says this. From the sick and disgusting woke culture issues shoved down our throats to the Democrats' traitorous America Last policies, we are done. Yeah. So I've seen a lot of stuff with this, and a good chunk of it was shut up. Even from a lot of the conservative sites I was looking at was why are you doing this? And obviously the U.S. has issues, but I look at it and I'm like, I think it's hilarious that Marjorie Taylor Greene said this because she is from like the purplest state.
Yeah.
Like both of the last 2 elections were the tightest in Georgia and could have gone either way if the Republicans had not chosen the scummiest candidates. So for her to be like, we'll separate the red and the blue states, it's like none of the states are that red or that blue. Like there's like you take the bluest state, Hawaii, and like 35% of the people are still conservative. If you take the reddest state like Alabama or something, 35% of the people are still going to be Democrats or liberal or whatever.
Yeah, because that's the extra thing of because it has been a thing that's been like it's been reported, it's being studied that there is sort of a migration of people from red states to blue states or from blue states to red states depending upon their political affiliation. Yeah. But here's the thing. I was raised by a conservative and a centrist. Yeah. And I am a hard leftist. So it's not a thing where you just take all the people who believe one thing, put them one place, take all the people who believe the other thing, put them another place, and then it's never going to be a problem again because all their children will believe the exact same. Because I don't believe pretty much anything that my parents believe in for the most part. Yeah. And same with my brother and I. For whatever reasons, my parents raised 2 leftists. How? No one knows, okay? But that's going to continue to happen. Yeah, like... So there's that, but also just the issue of what you were talking about was, like, even if they're the minority in the state, those are still people. And if you separate out the states by major party affiliation, you're just condemning, like, millions of people. Yeah. And, like, I see where some of the, like... Because there are big fundamental issues that you and me disagree on, and that lots of Republicans and Democrats are, just left, right, disagree, and they matter, right? And I think a lot of that has more to do with getting out of each other's business on a smaller level than being like, get out of my state. Yeah, and it's also a thing of where I'd say we're friends. Yeah. 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 One could argue that. One could argue. Peter and I disagree on a lot of things, a lot of things. And we're still friends. I think it's the issue of if you can't speak to someone, even talk to someone who is of a different political affiliation. And I want to clarify, there are some people that because of their beliefs, I won't associate with them. Some of their beliefs are beliefs that Peter also has, but it's the way they act on those beliefs and the way they act regarding those beliefs that makes me want to not affiliate with those people. I think it has a lot to do with respect. So I'm not saying that you have to... Yeah, I'm not saying you have to get along with and be friends with everyone of a different affiliation. Because you're not going to get along with everybody that has all your same views. I'm sure there's people that agree with you on a bunch of stuff and you're like, you are the most obnoxious. Yeah. I know there's people... Yeah. You're like... But if you can't get along with a single person who doesn't believe exactly as you do... not gonna lie to you, I feel like that's something you should talk about with a therapist. If you can't handle someone disagreeing with you on the smallest level, I think you need to see a therapist and discuss. Our action plan for today, Marjorie Taylor Greene, get therapy. Yeah, I think you need to discuss that with a mental health professional. I love the idea of shrinking the federal government. I do. I'm not a big fan of... But part of that is just simply the more that we have to collectively decide is the same for everyone, the harder it's going to be for us to do that because of those, again, fundamental differences and big differences in how people view the world. And I think that everyone I talk to say this is, I'm like... I think it's. Now, I don't think she's quite advocating for secession. I think, but I'm like, but it seems pretty close, right? She's very much towing that line. It was like we tried that. It didn't work. We tried it in very different circumstances, but it kind of sucked. Yeah.
and that was not really, yeah. But part of it is,
and I do want to touch on, I don't necessarily disagree with you, or I hate to say it, Marjorie Taylor Greene, on the idea of a smaller federal government.
Yeah.
But, and I mean, I've taken a public admin class. I understand the intent of bureaucracy is to slow things down.
Yeah.
Because slower change is means more consistency.
Yeah.
It means more safety. It means that crazy stuff gets caught before it actually hurts people. I understand that. But I do think that...
But they're like 40 years of gridlock that we're sitting at.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's gridlock, and then there's also, like... And here's my union vision coming into play. There's some middle managers that are really just there to yell at people.
Yeah.
They're middlemen that don't... Not to say that people don't need jobs, because people do need jobs, but that you can just streamline the process, take out the middleman, make things work easier, make things more efficient, and you can do more with government agencies with less, per se.
Yeah. And also I think part of that is you can say, okay, well, some of this we're going to change maybe tax structures and more goes to states, because that solves part of the problem. Is if the states are taking on more of the programs, that's more local control. If even the local governments are taking on more of the program, that's more local control. You're closer. I'm never going to run into a senator, but I might run into my city council person.
Yeah, I want to clarify. I am all for the localizing of care in that kind of sense, because I think the federal government, and this is the issue the U.S. runs into being as large as it is, is that the larger you get, the harder it is to understand, number one, all of the people that are in your country, and number two, provide for all those people, because it's not a one-size-fits-all function, right?
Like someone the same law that works for LA will not work for Paintsville.
And that's what I'm saying, is that maybe some amount of money of maybe like food stamps and food support would be more than enough for someone in Paintsville, but it's not even close to what someone in the suburbs of LA might need.
Yeah.
So and that's the difficult thing.
Yeah.
So I think I'm all for the localizing of welfare.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea. My other issue is just that I think that if you're going to localize welfare, there needs to be some kind of oversight, because I think there are local officials who will use that access to power to just strip all of that from people.
And that's
because they don't care about
that's the problem at any level.
They care about power and money.
And that's really the problem with all the levels of government, or any of them. And the problem with lack of government is that it's easy to abuse power. And
I think it's a double-sided sword. So, because one side with words are so hard. Publicity for governing officials, you know what they're doing all the time, and you can hold them accountable. But with that publicity comes fame, comes access to people, comes that kind of recognition. So they have more access, more power, more name recognition. So it's that kind of crux of, it's really important to know what they're all doing, but you also know who they are now, so now they have power that they wouldn't have if they were just some nameless guy.
Yeah.
Not to say that I think all people in political office should just not be covered at all, because, hey, I'm a journalist. That's my job.
We just read a tweet from
That's my job, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that would go very poorly if no one knew anything about the people who were governing them.
Yeah.
It's just that extra issue of once you have name recognition, you can leverage that for money and power, and that's what becomes a problem.
I'm not quite sure what she's talking about with Democrats' traitorous America Last policies. I think likely that's a shot at Ukraine. But it could be other things, because there are some things where I'm like, come on, guys.
I think in general she just doesn't.
The globalist versus isolationist mindset, which
anything. And even because what we know about Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of the things we know is that she was an election denier during the Trump to Biden administration kind of crossover, and she was a COVID-19 denier, vaccine truther, QAnon, all of those things.
Yeah,
so when she calls Democrats traitorous, she's not necessarily talking about just she doesn't like their policies. She's talking about a sincere belief that she holds that Democrats and anyone who believes in the Democratic platform is either being manipulated or, like, is a spawn of evil. Like, legitimately, she believes that these people are child molesters, are foreign spies, are, about the election deniers, are co-opting elections and stealing from her personally. I'm going to be clear when I say I don't think Marjorie Taylor Greene is well.
Yeah, I don't.
So.
She does CrossFit. That checks out.
Yeah, did you not know there was a whole thing? This is what I was.
That's probably mean. I know plenty of nice people
that's
that do
not
CrossFit,
mean.
but...
It is like a thing where I believe it was alleged she was having an affair with her CrossFit guru.
Okay, but that's just rumors.
That's sort of. It was like covered by a couple outlets, I think. Yeah.
That's not. We won't go down that road.
I said alleged.
Yeah.
To be clear, but
yeah.
She went to competitions though. She was really good at CrossFit.
Yeah.
For the record.
Interesting for sure. Yeah. Okay. Should we move on to? We were going to talk Iran.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me pull up the thing so I'm looking at it. The thing I'm seeing is NBC News. Iran probes deliberate poisoning of schoolgirls across the country. A wave of new cases were reported Wednesday after officials said the mysterious incidents may have been deliberate attacks designed to prevent girls from seeking an education.
Yeah.
And at least hundreds.
Yeah, and there were protests at the Capitol. There was a man, I can't remember his name, but he was quoted as saying that all he can do is keep his daughters from going to school, and that's like crushing for him because all he wants for them is an education.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just really.
It's really not good.
It's that's and it's a personal, like, crushing blow for me, I think, because women's education is something I care greatly about, and working in housing, a lot of the jobs I've picked up for a long time have involved, like, mentoring younger people, taking care of younger people. So I see, like, high school aged and younger girls, like, these are kids getting poisoned for trying to go learn, like, what, math? Geography?
Yeah.
What is so dangerous about a girl knowing math? I don't even know math. Let her learn math. That's what.
But if you
like,
did,
I learned math and I don't understand math. What is so scary about a girl knowing math, or science, or geography, or literally
somebody's
anything?
Insecure is what I like.
Well, that's what I'm coming back to, is what's so scary about a woman knowing any of these things is that a woman knowing anything makes her harder to control.
Yeah. Yeah. Not good. I mean, there's not good.
No.
Iran has been, I feel like, in a constant state of unrest for a hot minute now.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting because
it's not, and I will say it's not going to stop either. And my prediction is that we'll see, like, an even larger full-scale restructuring and revolution of the way Iran works. Because it's honestly just been building to that point for a while.
Yeah.
And I have to say to that is, get 'em, girls. That's,
Yeah.
Go off, girlies.
Let's see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Were we going to talk student loans?
We can, yeah.
Okay. So, Biden's student loan forgiveness thing is before the Supreme Court. They're making arguments right now. I've seen a couple news things about it. One was Amy Coney Barrett kind of joining with the liberal ones and asking, why is the student loan company on this, a plaintiff in this lawsuit? Which is a good question.
Interesting.
Girl boss,
Is it
truly.
Sally Mae?
I don't think so. I don't think it was one I recognized.
Sally Mae's the big one.
No.
Or at least the big one for where I'm
What?
from. I'll clarify.
I don't know. I'm not.
We're just.
I'm not familiar.
Ryan asked if it was College Avenue. I think we're just naming student loan companies.
I am
that
not
we know.
familiar with student loan companies.
I don't have loans either, but I know
Yeah.
Sally Mae because before I graduated, she was hitting me up.
They send stuff to my brother who is not going to college. And no, Amy Coney Barrett, true girl boss. She was asking questions about that.
I don't know if I'd
think-
call her the new kind of girl boss, I'd say.
What do you mean?
The new era. You are familiar with this phrase, gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss.
Oh, that sort of, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I will say girl boss is not really a girl empowerment kind of thing. It's referred to it's mostly to refer to a cutthroat woman who doesn't consider other women when she does things and is
that's
just
not how I
kind of
usually
out
hear it.
for her own.
When you say it when gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss, that's what you mean.
You hear it being used ironically,
Yeah.
but that's kind of the point, is to be cutthroat, only go for your own interests, CEO, working woman kind of.
Yeah.
That's the vibe of girl boss now.
Yeah.
It's not so much girl boss as it used to be. Like, hey, girl bosses, want to join my MLM?
Okay, that's
So,
worse though. I would rather have the cutthroat than
they
the
still
MLM.
well yeah they still 'cause MLMs are still girl boss, but it was more of like they were using girl boss as an aspirational term to get people to join, as you want to be a girl boss because you want to be a woman who is on top of things. It's not necessarily that anymore. So I would agree with you
Yeah.
that Amy Coney Barrett is, I would say, as one could put it, a girl boss in the gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss sort of way.
Yeah.
I'm not, if you couldn't tell, I'm not the biggest fan, but I do think it's interesting that she is joining with the liberal half of the
Or she was
court.
questioning that one. Yeah. I don't know what
she's,
generally is a... Which, I mean,
Yeah.
I still think to some extent, probably maybe more than you do, that a lot of the Supreme Court is still fairly good at being... Because you'll still frequently see decisions where someone who you'd be like, oh, would expect them to be on that side. If you're splitting them straight up by conservative liberal, is on the other side. You see it a lot with Neil Gorsuch. You see
I
it
wouldn't
less
say
with
they're...
Brett Kavanaugh, but you still see him do it too.
I wouldn't say they're necessarily balanced or well balanced in that way. I'd say the court is fairly unbalanced at this point in time. But it is, and the thing with the Supreme Court that you have to consider is that it's less about party line and more about constitutional interpretation. So you have the hard line constitutionalist approach, and then you have more of an interpretive approach. One views the Constitution as a literal document. What it means is exactly what it
I would
says.
say it's Alito and Thomas are the...
It is exactly what it says, and so on and so forth. And then you have interpretive, which is more of the understanding the Constitution as a living document and applying it critically to what it means now. I would say I'm more in the interpretive understanding of the Constitution because, fun fact, it was supposed to be revised every 25 years.
Some people said that.
That was the original intention of the founders, was that
Should have put it in the Constitution then.
revised. Exactly, they should have added it. But then, what if 25 years they took out the revision? You know what I'm saying?
Actually, it wasn't there, but they erased it.
They revised it,
nope.
if you would.
I'm glad we got the chance, but nobody else is gonna.
Yeah, there is kind of a 4-quadrant system to understanding the Supreme Court, which is different from normal political parties. There's the constitutionalist versus interpretive approach. And then there's also sort of an understanding of what a judge is, where you have one understanding is that a judge is not... It's the understanding of whether or not a judge is a legislator, essentially.
Yeah.
So I would... And the thing is that whether or not they want to be legislators...
They've been forced into being legislators.
Not even that. It's the precedents.
Yeah.
Every single decision that's written is a precedent.
Yeah.
So it changes how the law works. It can be overturned more easily in lower courts, but the Supreme Court like we've seen with Roe v. Wade, that was an upset
Occasionally.
of precedent.
Yes.
So there's the idea that a judge should understand this portion of what their decisions mean and endeavor to craft opinions in a way that promotes societal goods. And there's the other understanding, which is that a judge should act as if they are blind to that idea that a precedent is essentially a law, and when they make decisions, they're making law. They should be blind to that and rule strictly upon the statutes and the facts of the case. So you can be anywhere kind of in the quadrant. Constitutionalists tend to be of a more strict point of view. Interpretives tend to be of a more legislative point of view, but it can go either way, honestly. So
here's something interesting that Chief Justice Roberts said. He also showed an attitude, and Roberts is probably the closest to the average judge, I'd argue.
I would hesitate to say
Because-
anyone on the Supreme Court is an average judge
No, I mean, of the 9.
because of how it functions.
Of the 9, he's like the middle.
Centrist, you
Yeah.
would say then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I meant.
Yeah,
that's what
because
I was going
a judge in any other capacity doesn't really. Supreme Court
Yeah.
judges are a very particular kind of judge. I don't know if
Yeah.
there's any other kind of judge that acts as a Supreme Court judge does.
for. This is from CNN Politics. He also showed an attitude toward Roberts also showed an attitude toward basic policy choices as he questioned the fairness of federal assistance for a student who had taken out a college loan over someone who'd never had a college opportunity and instead started a lawn care service. Along comes the government and tells that person, you don't have to pay your loan, Roberts said of a hypothetical college loan borrower. Nobody's telling the person who is trying to set up the lawn service business that he doesn't have to pay his loan. He still does, even though his tax dollars are going to support the forgiveness of the loan for the college graduate, who's now going to make a lot more than him over the course of his lifetime, which is questionable because, you know, he started a lawn care business. He might be fine.
Yeah, lawn care pays surprisingly well.
Yeah, actually, it's not a bad job.
lucrative
I
business.
briefly had a lawn care business. It was
Yeah.
after I had a newspaper.
Yeah.
Much more lucrative than the newspaper, not gonna lie.
No, I understand that argument, and I would challenge Justice Roberts on that point to say, right, because, and here's the question of it. I'm not particularly sure what the issue is before the court, not just like the bill in general, but what the specific issue item is. I'm not entirely clear on what that is, but my challenge per se for Roberts would be why not legislate per se, but why rule against this law because of something that is essentially unrelated, right? It does make sense that he's making that connection there, but this man's lawn care business and the blue-collar people who don't have a college education aren't really going to be affected exactly, because from my understanding, there's no raise of taxes, just the same taxes.
Yeah.
The taxes aren't coming from the working people or being
Yeah, no. It's not like they figured this into the
additive.
budget. That's too much work for Congress.
Yeah, or being additive from the working people. It is a benefit to them. So why would you rule given that understanding? And I would further say, if that's the issue at hand, I would agree, and the legislature should come up with, and the other thing is that there is, in a sense, equivalences for people who own businesses and don't have college education to loan forgiveness. It's a benefit, right? People who own businesses get tax breaks.
This is true.
There is tax incentives for business owners that college-educated people who go into the workforce and don't own businesses don't have access to. So it goes both ways. If his idea is that this college loan forgiveness upsets that balance, okay, then I would write in your decision that this is okay. My suggestion would be you should decide in favor of the loan forgiveness and then add in your decision the suggestion that, hey, legislator, you should look into providing more benefits for these working people who don't have access to this benefit now. Because not every benefit is for every person.
Yeah.
Food stamps.
It's for people that need food stamps.
Food stamps is for people who need food stamps. right?
So to kind of go back to this, at the start of what you said, what the specific question that's being used.
The issue.
So basically, the loan forgiveness is on a little bit of, I wouldn't say more than a little bit, pretty shaky ground because it's not legislated. It's pushed from Biden. And it took a 2003
executive order?
Yeah. Looking at a 2003 statute that permitted the Secretary of Education to waive or modify federal student loans in national emergencies. Right? So they're using it in the wake of COVID-19, the pandemic, say, oh, we can waive student loans for everybody for a long period because of the pandemic, which is, pretty not because a lot of those loans weren't incurred during the pandemic. People aren't, for a lot of people, maybe the pandemic didn't even affect them that much financially, and it's just blank. Now, a lot of people did.
Most people it affected pretty significantly.
Yeah, but there was also stimulus checks given out during that. There was a lot of other things that were...
I will say for the record, the stimulus checks did not go to everyone, and not everybody benefited from that. I know I certainly didn't.
Yeah.
I was over 18 at the time. Did I ever see stimulus money? No.
They sent one that bounced.
Your
The bank wouldn't take it.
bounced?
No, the bank wouldn't take it. It didn't actually bounce, but the bank wouldn't take it.
Okay.
It's like, come on, man. I didn't really need it, and I didn't feel like I was eligible for it, but they sent me it, so I was...
Worth a shot, you know?
Yeah, I was like, I'm going to spend this better than the federal government will, so...
Yeah, so then I think the issue is this a case of presidential overbreadth, which...
Because I look at that and I say that's... To be fair, the federal government has given out a lot of money before on flimsy terms.
Right.
Usually...
No, I would say that I think there is a case to be made on whether that is overbreadth. The issue is it constitutional?
Yeah.
Questionable, right? I'm not entirely sure if this is exactly in this way a constitutional issue. They might be going at it in the format of, because the two types of cases that the Supreme Court can hear is a constitutional issue and a state versus a state issue. So I'm uncertain how they got on the docket for the court, whether it's a state v. state application or a constitutional issue application.
Here's who the plaintiffs are. The lawsuit was brought by 6 Republican-led states and 2 borrowers who are ineligible for the full relief.
Right, so in that case it could, in theory, be a state v. state. So that would be how they could get on the docket. Because there are certain, there's a little bit of wiggle room for cases involving D.C. and the federal government as a state.
Yeah.
So that's the issue. So the Supreme Court definitely does have jurisdiction in that matter. How they're going to decide, I'm uncertain. But the thing is, right, it was a statute from 2003. So,
and the statute from 2003 was mostly applying to, I'm going to say, let me look it up.
Okay. I'll go ahead and continue what I was saying.
Crap.
Then.
It's called the HEROES Act, and it could be a bunch of different things. Okay. They've named a lot of things the HEROES Act.
Yes. So that's the thing is it depends on how it's defined in the statute particularly, but what is considered a national emergency. COVID-19 is a national emergency.
Initially related to the wars after 9/11.
Right, but even if it doesn't clearly specify that this is the only purpose, doesn't matter. That's what the statute is. 2003 should have thought about that if they didn't want this to function. So that's the thing is what counts as a national emergency? The pandemic, certainly. Increased rates of poverty and debt among the people in society with the highest amount of education. You could argue that. You could argue that increasing debt and increased rates of poverty in the U.S., increased rates of usage of welfare and those sorts of things. You could argue that those would classify as a national emergency. It depends on how you go about it.
And I think one of the interesting things from this that that I kind of look at them like sketchy is that every time there's a national emergency, the government gets a little bigger, grab a little more power. They take, take 9/11. We got the Department of Homeland Security.
Yeah,
We got the TSA. We got a bunch of stuff that, yes, it's keeping us safe, but it's also doing some other things. And I don't know if you have ever looked at those tests of how well the TSA does. Yeah. Well, I won't put it on a watch list today. But, no. But...
TSA once stole 2 cans of frosting from me. I was actually really mad about that.
Man!
They called it a gel. They said, This is too much gel. I said, it's
Was
a
it
can
explosive
of
frosting, Jess?
No. It was a can of Betty Crocker cream cheese frosting that was unopened, for the record.
One time...
And they took it from me.
A friend of mine went to Africa, and they met someone there who knew someone in Kentucky. They went to Kenya, and they met someone there who knew someone in Kentucky and said, hey, can you take these like traditional cooking things that we have here back? And they were very legit about it. Like, it was legit and all that.
Okay.
Right? But one of them was flour. And the bag broke and was over his clothes in his luggage, and he was brain fogged because he'd just flown, for 14 hours, and he was tired and exhausted and all that. And he was like, I don't know how that got there. He wasn't like, but they got sorted out. But it was like,
okay. One time they went through my bag because I had a bottle of wine in there.
oh, you couldn't take that. Was it a chug it or chuck it situation?
No, it was my
checked.
Yeah, it was my
so you
checked
could have a
bag.
bottle.
Yeah. No, but I opened my suitcase when I got home, and all of my clothes were unfolded.
Was the wine still there though?
Yeah, and it was in a green bag that said TSA approved, and I said, okay.
Did you keep the bag?
Sure. No. I did not keep the bag. I was a little mad
Instead of
about
like
that.
the gold medal things that wine bottles will have, it was TSA approved.
I was mad. I was actually mad about it. I've said, you unfolded all of my clothes. You unfolded? I had been in Italy for 8 days, and we would go to bed at 1 or 2 in the morning, get up at 6 a.m., and then walk the entire day.
So you were a little tired.
Yeah, I was exhausted.
Yeah.
It was also in the middle of the summer, so it was like 100 degrees every day, sun. I got severe burns. So TSA and I have beef.
Here's the thing about the student loans, reeling back to student loans.
Right.
On the one hand, I'm a big fan of you took out the loan, you pay it. On the other hand, student loans tend to be pretty predatory.
Exactly.
And like part of it is I think probably extreme push. Part of it's college recruitment, right? They're trying to get people in there, and probably they're letting people who shouldn't go to college at the point that they're at. And so there'll be a lot of people who won't graduate, who probably shouldn't have been there, who will then have student loan debt that'll hamper them, and they got nothing from it.
Well, I want to clarify on that point that there are certainly people that you would look at and look on paper or from an admissions perspective shouldn't be at college per se. But a lot of those people go on to succeed, right? Like we have a lot of first generation college students here. Yeah. We have a lot of low income college students here. On paper for other universities might say, looking at them, like they should not be at college at this point for whatever reason. Most of our students are succeeding pretty well in that way. Yeah.
Have you looked at our retention rate?
I have looked at our retention rate. Yeah. I'm aware.
I would say, and that's fair. But I think one good thing that I think I've seen more of, maybe noticed more of, well, I guess since in college, is that there's a lot of people who are coming back or going to college for the first time at later ages. I think that's a good thing because maybe you don't have it figured out when you're 18. You don't know what you want to do with, and you don't feel like spending $40,000, $100,000 on to get a degree to work in a career that you don't know if you like yet. So I think that would be something that would help with the student is just a more awareness of, I don't need to go to college right now. I can work a job, because there's plenty of good jobs you can get that don't require a college degree, and figure out something and be like, oh, I like this, that intrigues me, and now I have more, because 18-year-olds are not known for having a lot of cash.
Yeah.
So that's why the loans became so
No, and I'll
like,
agree
necessary.
with you and further that point to say that part of it is also a lack of financial education. I don't know how loans work. Not going to lie to you. Don't know how credit card works.
Yeah.
I don't know how credit works. I would not know how to sign for anything. Should
Yeah.
I have to? And I will. In the next year.
Yeah.
I went through all of school education in Ohio. And in theory, we were given financial education, but it wasn't anyone teaching it to us. It was contracted out to this company that gave us modules that poorly explained what was happening. So I have no idea. And I'm not the only one, right? Everyone, pretty much every person who went through my high school, which is 500 people every spring graduating, they don't know it either. And we're not like an uncommon thing. I would further say that we also didn't have a lot of access to career-centric education. Talking to Rose, our managing editor for The Progress, her high school had a program where when you graduated, you were either college ready, career ready, or both. And part of that was that you had to pick a track for your career readiness, and they would educate you on how to do some kind of trade. I think she did sewing and fashion was hers.
Yeah.
You could go to a trade center through my high school, but it was limited how many people could get in to like maybe 40 or 50 people from 4 high schools combined in. And if you don't go there, which if you go there, you're probably not going to college. And if you don't go there, there's no trade-centric education.
I think that is something that, in a hopeful note, I think Kentucky, the state, has been doing better. Now, I did not go to public school in Kentucky. I was homeschooled, so what do I know? But like, I'm thinking about Scott County, where I grew up, and there's the main high school. There's 2 high schools now, and there's a school that's connected to it that a lot more than 50 could go to. That was very more of the trades, or like it had a nursing program in high school, stuff like that in high school, and a lot of that you're going to be career ready or college ready, like those are the
yeah. And I will say, since coming down to Kentucky, I'm from Columbus, Ohio. Since coming down to Kentucky, talking to people or just driving around, I've seen a lot more tech schools, trade schools, career schools for high school students than I ever did in Ohio.
Yeah, and like Scott County also has one of the largest manufacturing plants in the world, so that helps because for one, I mean they bring in a lot of money and they are pretty generous with how they support educational programs and stuff like that. So that's helped with the trade because they want employees, they want good employees. So I know they have a lot of partnerships with like the local community college and stuff like that. And that is a good thing because that's something where people can work and get paid to go to school, which is good. But I think student loans, like the mindset that was put in my head was you're paying for college without loans.
Yeah.
And that meant that I couldn't go to a college that was going to cost me more than I could afford. And I think, but then again, a lot of colleges, part of that was because I was able to have good enough grades to get, and not everybody does. And not everybody who should be in college has good enough grades and good enough scores and is in the right place and access to that college they can afford.
Family support and family connections. Because there's the other issue of to get the better loans, so to speak, the ones that are less predatory, I would argue that I would say that any loan that charges more than necessary interest to maintain the loan per se is a predatory loan. That's my opinion. Yeah. But in order to get access to those better loans that are less predatory, you have to have a parent or a guardian or someone who is fiscally responsible for you co-sign. Not everybody has that.
Yeah.
I had a resident who came to talk to me and asked me how she could get access to more financial resources because she doesn't have anyone in her life who could co-sign on a loan for her.
Yeah.
And additionally to that, I receive financial support from my family to go here.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people receive financial support from their families to go to college. And if you are in a situation where you have family connections and you could co-sign on a loan, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's still financial support there.
Yeah.
So I think I've been very lucky to have both if I need it. I don't have any loans, I'll clarify.
Yeah.
I don't have any loans because I came here, which was the cheapest option available to me, so that I wouldn't have loans going forward.
Yeah.
But that's not the case for everyone. That's not a route that is open to everyone. And I think if you're in a
rapidly escalating cost of college too.
Exactly. And that goes to my point that you could argue that that is a national emergency because listen to me. Stop making that face. Listen to what I'm saying first. Listen to what I'm saying first. If the cost of college becomes so exorbitantly high that it is not feasible for even the middle class to afford it, I would say that's an emergency because the number of college-educated people you have is going to tank. That is your scientists, that is your doctors, that is, in many cases, your legislators. That is...
We need them, though.
Yes, we do. That is your software designers, your nurses, in some cases, the people who cook your food, your financial advisors, the people that make the hires, and this is not anything against tradespeople because we'd be in the...
Shout out to the plumbers, am I right?
Thinking of not curse words. In the ditch, we'll say. I can't curse. In the ditch without tradespeople.
In the toilet.
Sometimes
we would have to be literally in the toilet.
In the toilet without tradespeople. But the other...
It takes all types.
The converse is that someone who is a trained electrician probably can't handle extreme tax filing and financial advising.
Yeah.
Like someone who's trained to do that could.
Yeah.
So we do need college-educated people. We need tradespeople, absolutely, but we also need college-educated people. If we get to a point where most people can't afford college or can't afford the loans to go to college, then we get to a point where we start having issues of we run out of doctors and nurses and the people that we need to run those aspects of our country.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. We should probably make sure to talk about college loans again and college expenses because I think that would be a good thing.
Yeah.
But I guess for now we should probably move on to the last segment, which was 2 different types of movie genres. Favorite horror movie and favorite musical.
Favorite horror movie and favorite musical.
You go first.
I will go first. My favorite horror movie is Ready or Not. Are you familiar with it? Ryan, are you familiar with the movie? No? He's squinting and shaking his head at me. Ready or Not is about this woman who gets married. Oh, he's setting up his mic. He's ready. It's about this woman who she's been with her fiance for a little while, and it's family tradition. They have to get married at his family home. He's a heir to this big fortune, very wealthy family.
It's kind of a gloomy home?
No. It's a beautiful mansion. Okay. His family's a bit weird, but it's a beautiful mansion. And they get married, and it's because their family is a card and games family. That's what they make. That's how they earn their fortune is on cards and games. Like the Hasbro family or something. Sure.
Yeah.
They, on their wedding night, they have to go into this room with the family and play a game. And whatever game you play is a card that gets drawn out of the box. So, the other women who have married into the family, the other husbands are like, oh, haha, I had checkers, I had chess, I had Go Fish. And this woman, the main character, pulls out a card, and it's hide and seek. Hide and seek is not just hide and seek. Hide and seek is they have to kill her by dawn, or all of them die.
Ooh. Who put that in the deck? Dang.
Well, it's not clearly stated, but it is very much implied that they got access to their fortune and they succeeded because of a pact made with the devil.
Never a good idea. Never a good idea.
So it's a very much a good for her movie, a good for her horror movie.
So they all die, is what I'm hearing.
I'm not going to spoil it, but it is a good for her movie. And there's a lot of, like, because she stays in her wedding dress for most of the movie, and it gets ripped up and covered in blood. And there's a scene where she's running through a hallway with, like, the belt of shotgun rounds and a shotgun in her wedding dress.
Yeah, okay.
Iconic. There's a guitar riff solo of Here Comes the Bride as the house burns. Oh, it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
It does sound like a fun movie.
I would recommend it.
I'm not a big horror guy. I do not like horror movies. But Quiet Place, excellent movie. Love that movie. It's a good movie. You should watch it.
I'm familiar, but I haven't seen it.
You need to see it. It's a good movie. It's about... let's see. It is about... There's alien monsters that attack sound. And it is following a family with a deaf child that as they attempt to survive. Huh. Very good movie.
Interesting.
One of my favorites. It's like probably my top 30 favorite movies, but definitely my favorite horror movie.
Okay.
Not that I've watched many. Ryan,
would you like to tell us?
Ryan is the biggest film man.
He's coming over. Did your mic not work? Oh no.
It's not plugged in. So I'm now pseudo at the table. The cams aren't pointed at me, but here I am.
He's hiding off to the side.
Yeah. Horror movie. We talked about it before, and I'm going to say it as my favorite because I've watched a lot and I can't think of any others off the top of my head. Hell House LLC, 2015, a very campy B movie made by an independent company of, I don't know if they were like amateurs or if they had made more before that and just built up to that one and then hit a home run. But it's very well made, very practical, spooky. Good one.
Yeah.
The sequels, meh. But, alas.
Quality.
All right.
And now, conversely, favorite musicals. Would you like to start this time?
Sure. I'm going to go with Sound of Music. It just holds up so well.
Classic.
It just, I was thinking Sound of Music or Fiddler on the Roof or Les Mis, but Les Mis, they botched the ending. Fiddler on the Roof is phenomenal. Highly recommend. But Sound of Music...
haven't seen Fiddler, and I really need to.
You should see Fiddler.
Yeah.
Sound of Music, it's just so good. It's such a sweet... I mean, it's a bittersweet ending, but it's a happy ending. You know, they survive. Yeah. I'm a sucker for a happy ending. It's part of why I do not like horror movies. Yeah. Sound of Music is phenomenal.
Respect. I would say I'm not going to be basic and say Phantom of the Opera, even though I love Phantom of the Opera. Even though it's the worst plotline ever. I love Love Never Dies. Are you familiar with Love Never Dies? Either of you?
I am familiar with that, and I have seen a couple scenes and was like, nope, that's enough.
Yep. Yeah. Right? Love Never Dies.
Are you going with Love Never Dies?
No.
Okay.
No, this is just an aside real quick. Love Never Dies, for the uninitiated, is the sequel to Phantom of the Opera, set in a Coney Island circus. Oh. And it just goes downhill from there, baby.
So the plot of Phantom of the Opera is convoluted and bad.
No.
Yes, it is.
It's good.
I'm not saying it's a bad musical.
This might be the thing that brings us to blows.
But Love Never Dies is crazier, right? Like it's
absolutely
way more whacked out.
And it ruins the entire story of the first musical,
I love it when sequels do that.
Which is a classic that everyone loved. But I will say that the original plan for the sequel was much crazier. I will suggest you do your own research on that one because it is quite a trip. But I will say I do have two actual favorite musicals. Very different vibes. I'll preface this. Newsies and Moulin Rouge.
Oh, that is very different vibes.
Yeah, very different vibes.
I did not like Moulin Rouge, but Newsies.
What? Well, okay, you would dislike Moulin Rouge.
Yeah.
Are you familiar?
I'm familiar with the concept.
Okay. Yeah. I love Moulin Rouge. The musicals is fantastic. The staging and the direction of it is fantastic. I love the music in Moulin Rouge. It's very, at least the stage production of it is very, it's very colorful. It's very beautiful. In some ways, it's very camp. The ending is sad, makes me cry, but I do love Moulin Rouge. And Newsies, very surprised the first time I watched it to see Disney touting a pro-union message, but we'd love to see it. Are you guys familiar with the
I've seen
Newsies?
Newsies.
I've
Yeah.
never seen it. No.
It's about you. You're not a big musicals guy,
It's-
but you should probably watch it.
It is it is based around the 1899 Newsboy
Pulitzer and Hearst
riots in New York and the strikes. And it tells the story. If the Disney version focuses on sort of like 1.5 guys who were actually there. Some of the guys were actually there. Some of the guys weren't real people. But the musical version focuses on Jack, Davy, Les, and Catherine, who is the
daughter of
daughter
Pulitzer
of
or
Pulitzer.
Hearst.
Catherine
Yeah.
was the real daughter of Pulitzer. She died as a baby, but they named the character after her. And it is the four, and Catherine's a journalist, and the other three are newsies. And it is the story of them leading this strike. Oh, and Crutchy. Can't forget Crutchy. What a king. Leading this strike, and the FDR is a part of the movie.
On crutches.
Yeah, he's called Crutchy.
No, Roosevelt.
Huh?
Theodore, not.
Oh,
yeah.
wrong.
Teddy.
You say Roosevelt like they both aren't named.
Yeah, I realized my mistake.
Teddy Roosevelt was the governor when this happened, so he's also in the
Oh, very
musical.
nice.
It's a pretty solid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
'cause
good.
it's
The musical is fantastic. Pro-union
solid
message.
journalism. You know.
Yeah, I really like that movie a lot. Not movie. I like the musical a lot. But those are my two: Newsies and Moulin Rouge.
Ryan.
So Ryan.
Well, obviously, my musical's going to be a movie, not
That's
so much
okay.
the theater
Yeah.
style.
A movie musical is acceptable.
Yeah, so mine is, it labels itself as a biopic, but it's not. It is a fantastical take, and it's very fiction on P.T. Barnum's life. And if you know anything, it's The Greatest
Yeah.
Showman.
Oh my God.
The
Yeah.
Greatest Showman, Hugh Jackman, Kate Blanchett, all this great stuff. I think it's Kate Blanchett, right? If I remember off the top of my head. Wasn't she, yeah, pretty sure it was Kate
So.
Blanchett. But yeah, but
I'm in it for
regardless,
Zendaya. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Zendaya, yeah, Zac
She's
Efron.
so pretty.
It was for sure. At least it's for sure Hugh Jackman, Zac Efron, Zendaya.
Yes.
I'm pretty certain it's Kate Blanchett, but I could be remembering that incorrectly.
Yeah.
Peter kind of spilled the beans. I'm not a big musical guy. I don't really like. I'm not like a music. I don't have a musical bone in my body, so it's not like I'm out here like yes, music. Like
You don't walk down the hallway singing Tightrope.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
you specifically, Peter. You're very musical, and so like I can understand why you and Jess, you like theater. So like
No, I wasn't gasping in offense. I was gasping in offense. Not in a. I was gasping in a slight surprise because, fun fact, dark Jess Wilson backstory, my dark origin story. I was a competitive singer.
What? Really?
I
Did not know this.
I sang competitive solos. I sang in show choirs. I competed in like 3 or 4 choirs.
The more you know.
I sang in a show, and I have intentionally not told anyone unless it comes up.
Well, welcome, and now it's on the podcast.
Yeah, it is
for
now on the podcast. It's my
potentially
dark.
all of the internet to see.
It's my dark origin
Yes,
story.
please watch this all over the internet.
Is that I
But-
used to sing classical and musical theater.
I turned on The Greatest Showman well after it was like out. Like it was years
Oh, yeah.
after it was
Yeah.
released, and I was a senior in high school, and I watched it, and I could not believe how much I enjoyed it. Like I still to this day will listen to the soundtrack by itself just because I
It's a
like
good
the music.
soundtrack.
It's great music.
Yeah.
And the story was very, very nice. And once again, I'll reiterate, it is not a biopic. I don't know who
not
keeps
true.
labeling. I don't know if they labeled it.
It's a
themselves.
highly
It is
fictionalized version
very
of P.T.
fictional.
Barnum's life.
It is a fantastical take on something of a person that really did exist and did make the circus, but not in the way that P.T. Barnum was actually not a good person.
Yeah, he was.
He
There's
was.
a reason
Black
that you don't
curse.
want your kids to run off and join the circus.
Yeah, like P.T. Barnum was a very, very.
Well, that's not really.
Awful
That's
man.
not really about how you don't want your kids to run off and join the circus because there's a stigma around circus performers. For the record, I love circus performers. Cooler than I will ever be.
Hate them.
By the way, and it was less about P.T. Barnum treated his performers, but yeah, he was an awful person.
Oh yeah,
But
but the performances
the music
in The
goes
Greatest
hard.
Showman,
It
the
does.
performances in The Greatest Showman, it was very. I think what really enticed me as like a film guy, I guess, is like the acting. They were all so in tune with each other, and like the
Yeah.
chemistry from one character to the next. It didn't matter if it was Zac Efron and Hugh Jackman or Efron and Zendaya.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. Everyone, when they needed to play their role and interact with other characters, they were so in tune, so much chemistry. It was very fluid.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like that The Greatest Showman as a musical rivals a lot of more serious films with just how well the characters like were portrayed by the actors
Yeah.
on screen. So yeah, that's my take. That's my musical. And
I appreciate
back
it.
behind the booth I
appreciate
go.
it. Yeah, he's
Okay.
scurrying off as we speak.
That's
I
it?
think that's about all we have. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for watching and listening to Wilson v. Wilson. I'm Jess Wilson,
I'm Peter Wilson.
and we will catch you guys next time. Bye.